There's lots of other aspects to that combination, but let's go on and have a look at the opposition, which we can see here in Marilyn Monroe's horoscope. What a difference. This is a person with a Leo ascendant, but note that she's got Moon and Jupiter in the 7th house in Aquarius. So looking at the Moon-Jupiter conjunction here, the Moon is connected with your emotional life. And the 7th house with other people. The Moon in Aquarius is like collective. Aquarius is to do with the wide world. So the Moon in Aquarius shows, in a sense, that she's got a stronger emotional bond to the collective world or people in general than maybe to individuals. And the fact that the Moon and Jupiter are then together here shows that not only is she emotional, deeply emotional, but Jupiter has this expansive influence. So there's a tremendous emotional force field around her, you could say, which, being in the 7th house, would have a really big impact on other people. And the fact that this is then in opposition to Neptune shows for her that there's an element of chaos or confusion about it. So in a sense, she loses her emotional identity and is owned by the public. That's Moon in Aquarius. And it doesn't really know who she is. Neptune opposite the Moon does tend to give tremendous sensitivity, but also some emotional suffering. So that's the opposition, and one example of, and we can also look at the squares, square aspects in Marilyn Monroe's horoscope. And as you can see, now we've taken the Moon opposition Neptune and we can see that Saturn is square Neptune, very tight orb, that's 22 degrees, that's 21, and square the Moon, pretty tight orb, 19 to 21, 2-degree orb. And Saturn is also square Jupiter. Now this Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, they're all three collective planets. That's quite a rare pattern. And the Saturn-Neptune square happens every 35 years. And it's often connected with very, very difficult circumstances. Now, I mentioned before in the house module that Saturn in Scorpio in the 4th house of the home shows very difficult circumstances. The square to Neptune makes it even more likely to have been suffering. And as you probably know, Marilyn Monroe her mother abandoned her, basically, and she was in a home most of her childhood. That is the kind of the difficulties characterized by the square aspect here. So we'll just look at what's good in Marilyn Monroe's horoscope, and we can see here that she also got this grand trine that I mentioned earlier. You can see the orb here, for example, from Mars to Saturn is very, very small. It's probably the most powerful aspect in her horoscope, with that tight orb there. And the orb between Pluto and Saturn is quite large, and also the orb between Pluto and Mars is quite large. Uranus, which is in conjunction with Mars, is not really in orb to Pluto, although you could say there is a trine between Uranus and Saturn. And this is a grand trine, and the grand trine shows a kind of a energy flow which is continual in the horoscope. It's a tremendously deep-rooted and harmonious energy. The only thing with this is that the planets involved are so difficult. But if you take the personal planet involved here, which is Mars, and note that it's in the 8th house, which is to do with sexuality amongst other things, intimacy, and Pisces, which is to do with the collective expression of emotion, for example. I think the fact that she was such a powerful sex symbol, and that in a sense she emanated a really strong erotic energy, is shown by this sort of electric energy is shown by this grand trine. Mars-Uranus is very electric. But as water sign trines tend to be very emotional, and water signs tend to show quite difficult emotional circumstances. This grand trine also shows the fact that she had difficult experience sexually. She was molested as a child. She was raped when she was young. This is also shown by Mars in the 8th house. Mars in the 8th house, probably connected to Saturn, which shows kind of men that misuse their authority, perhaps, even though it's a trine. But she kind of used it to her advantage, I think, and perhaps that grand trine shows that in her life. Okay, so let's look at the last aspect, which is sextiles, and we can see that Bill Clinton's got quite a lot of sextiles, actually. He's got a very harmonious horoscope and not much disharmony in it. Apart from the fact that he's got Mars Neptune on the ascendant, and that he gets himself into a lot of trouble. But you can see here that the 60-degree aspect, the sextile, is, for example, between the Sun and Jupiter. It's about a 3-degree orb, and the Sun is in Leo, and Jupiter is in the 1st house. This is a very, very favourable combination, and the merging of the Sun, the identity, with Jupiter, the opportunity for expansion and wisdom. It shows somebody who's wise and incredibly sociable, because it's coming from the 11th house to the 1st house. So this is a person who truly shines when they come into a room and creates an enormous impression. What a charisma this guy must have. And it's a very, very kind of harmonious for him. You'll also see that there's a trine between Jupiter and Uranus, which kind of knits this together. The orb is 5 degrees from Uranus to the Sun. So it's a bit wide, but it's not too wide, really. Not when all 3 planets are involved. And so the Sun is constellating here with the outer planet Uranus and the outer planet Jupiter. And that combination is a very, very electric combination. It shows tremendous visionary nature and a kind of very, very inspired personality. So that's a pretty fantastic combination, in fact. Now the other sextiles, you can see, because Mars is at 6 and Neptune at 6 and Venus is at 11, there's a very strong sextile to Saturn, Mercury and Pluto. Very complicated sextile because the 2 conjunctions are in sextile to each other. But you can see, for example, that Mercury at 7 degrees is very, very close to Neptune as a sextile, and that's going to be show tremendous imagination, good liar, and very creative generally. You also see that Venus here is at 11 degrees and Pluto is at 11 degrees, and that shows the harmonious integration of his charm and values and taste with Pluto, which is this planet that goes into great psychological depth. So, I mean, you're not going to have a superficial relationship with Venus-Pluto. Venus-Pluto always wants to know more and more and more. It digs deep into the psychological nature of the partner in relationship. So, he's a very charismatic and rather irresistible person, especially if you're Monica Lewinsky, I guess. So there we are. Those are the main aspects. So on the one hand, we have the harmonious aspects with the sextiles and trine, based on the division of the horoscope in 3, and on the other, we have the square and opposition, based on the cross formation in the horoscope, and the conjunction. And these are the ways that planets integrate with each other. It shows the energy flow in the horoscope. And you're then ready to start interpreting the horoscope. So you've got the planets in the signs, in the houses, with the aspects. There's a lot of combinations there, probably about 10,000 possible combinations between planets and in signs and houses. So you need to understand the key nature of each sign, each house, and each planet. Then you can start integrating it. So this is the final course about the basics of astrology. The next module is going to be about how to synthesize it all. What's important to look at in the horoscope and what's not so important. Because the idea is to pick out, especially if you're doing a consultation for someone, to pick out the absolutely crucial things. There's a whole lot of things in the horoscope you could talk about. You could talk for hours, but what you need to concentrate on is the crucial things in the horoscope, what's absolutely the most important. And in the next module, that's what we'll be looking at. I'll see you then. Thank you.